how much you want to borrow, up to £15,000. At Everyday Loans, we offer a service that's friendly and reliable. Apply online or on your phone. Representative APR 99.9%. Apply now at everydayloans.co.uk.
Mum, what's this?
Bit early, isn't it? I don't think I want the fuss of a funeral, you know. Direct cremation, it just keeps it simple, doesn't it? And then you can do what you like with me then.
Maybe I can sprinkle you in.
With your radishes.
I think you'd make a lovely courgette.
At Co-op Funeral Care, you can now pre-plan your direct cremation for £1,700. To find out more, visit us or give us a call.
With Virgin Media, get smooth, lightning-fast M125 broadband. Just £24 a month and no setup fee. It's now even easier to switch to the provider awarded Best Broadband Experience. Yeah, that's smooth. Virgin Media. See what you can do. Visit virginmedia.com.
And now joining us are Ismail and Tyro. A very warm welcome to NDTV. My first question to you, Ismail. Of course, your character is a new addition to Tolkien's world. Was there any pressure or did you take any inspiration to develop the character, or was it written so well that you didn't have to do much?
No, there is pressure, of course. There is pressure. But I was very ready to enter Tolkien's world. I'm a huge fan, and I wanted to do right.
You're watching NDTV 24/7.
Good morning, North America. Good afternoon, Europe, and good evening to everyone watching from India. This is US Election Watch. I'm Allister D'Souza in Washington, D.C. The headlines. Harris targets undecided voters in an event hosted by Oprah Winfrey in Michigan. Harris says intruders will get shot when asked about being a gun owner. Jewish voters to blame if he loses polls. Trump hits out against Jewish Americans who don't back him. House to vote on a bill to increase protection for presidential candidates, reports say. The US House vote is expected to be unanimous. Now, less than 50 days to go, and it's a 50-50 chance on who could win. The focus, therefore, remains on the key battleground states that will decide who gets the White House. And that's where the candidates are and will be. Harris's campaign is focusing on reproductive rights in its rally in Georgia, while Trump returns to the campaign trail on Saturday in North Carolina. Meanwhile, the 2024 voting season has officially kicked off as voters in 3 states can now line up at early polling sites to cast their ballots. Early in-person voting sites opened throughout Virginia on Friday, marking the first state to offer voters that option. Now, those early voting sites will remain open until November the 2nd. Also, pen this into your calendars. 10 days to go before the last debate between the Republicans and Democrats before Election Day, most likely. Now, it's the vice presidential debate that we're talking about. Ohio GOP Senator J.D. Vance and Minnesota Democratic Governor Tim Walz will face off each other in a crucial debate on October the 1st. Now, let's get you more on all that. Lots to sum up there. We're joined by our reporter, Benji Haya. He's with us, joining us from Washington, D.C. Benji, a lot going to happen. A busy few days ahead on the campaign trail.
Quite, and the election has already begun in a sense, as you say. Early voting up and running in Virginia, as well as Minnesota and South Dakota. Kamala Harris, as you mentioned, on the campaign trail in Georgia. That is a pivotal, key, swing, battleground, must-win state, whatever you want to call it. Her focus there on reproductive rights coming after news that a mother died after not being able to get the care she required in light of the state's abortion ban. She's then off to Wisconsin, another one of those important states that she or Donald Trump will need to win if they want to try to win the White House in November. Donald Trump back on the campaign trail, as you say, on Saturday, but he was in the headlines last month for attending 2 events here in Washington, D.C., one aimed at fighting anti-Semitism, and at that event, he made a number of anti-Semitic tropes, conflating Jewish people with Israel. He claimed that the homeland for Jews would be, and I quote, totally annihilated, obliterated, doomed, he said, would not exist, wiped off the face of the earth if he didn't win that presidential election in November, suggesting that the Democrats, which he calls the enemy, support Hamas. Again, much of this unfounded claims. At a separate event down the road, an Israel summit, he said, and this is a claim he's made numerous times, that, quote, any Jewish person that votes for Kamala Harris is a fool, he says, and should have their head examined. He also offered what is being perceived by many as a sort of veiled threat by pinning the blame on American Jews, saying they would have a lot to do with his defeat if they didn't vote for him. The vast majority of Jewish people in the United States picked Joe Biden and Hillary Clinton before him over Donald Trump in 2020 and 2016. Those comments last night have been condemned by Kamala Harris's husband, Doug Emhoff, who is a Jew, as vile anti-Semitism. Kamala Harris herself also in the headlines overnight following an interview with Oprah Winfrey. One of the main remarks to come out of that is that she said she would shoot an intruder into her home. She previously admitted during the debate with President Donald Trump that she was indeed a gun owner.
Yes, Benji, we'll have more on that part of the story about gun control. Going to take a deep dive into that with our guests coming up. But before we move on to our next update, I just want to ask you about these polls that came out in the last 48 hours or so that were looking at the debate performance, or rather how well the candidates did after the debate. And it still is very close to call, still neck and neck, it seems.
Yeah, this is a really tight election, and the new poll showing that former President Donald Trump and Vice President Kamala Harris are effectively deadlocked with just weeks to go until that election. They are tied nationally, and they are essentially at each other's heels in those key battleground states that we were discussing, the handful that will ultimately decide the outcome when Americans go to the polls. They are tied both at 47%. The rest of voters seem undecided. We have seen from some polls that Kamala Harris is edging ahead in Pennsylvania. That was, of course, the state which played host to the presidential debate earlier this month. But despite the vice president's strong showing on stage, clearly it was not enough to massively move the needle in this campaign, and for an election that will probably be decided by the very narrowest of margins following an unprecedented upheaval during what has been a simply remarkable couple of months in American politics.
Benji, do stay with us. We're joined by Larry Sabato. He's an American political scientist at the University of Virginia. Larry, we were just talking about how neck and neck the whole race is to the White House. Despite that election debate that we saw a few days ago, Kamala Harris has really not been able to make massive gains in terms of turning the tide. Yes, she's caught up, but why are we not seeing her make more gains than we should have, perhaps, after that debate night where she, many say, won?
Because we're very polarized in the United States, and it's hard to imagine large numbers of voters changing sides. They know who they're going to vote for. You cited the debate. overwhelmingly, people say correctly that Kamala Harris won that debate. It wasn't even vaguely close. But that doesn't mean they're going to vote for the debate winner. They've already made a choice, and they tune in mainly to cheer for their side. That's what our debates have come down to.
Right, Benji and Larry, stay with us. We'll come back to you in just a few seconds. Just an update here now. After a second apparent assassination attempt on former President Donald Trump, the U.S. Congress is expected to vote on passing a bill increasing Secret Service protection for presidential and vice presidential candidates. The bill directs the Secret Service director to apply uniform standards for protection of presidents and vice presidents and major presidential and vice presidential candidates. The Secret Service is under scrutiny in Congress after two apparent assassination attempts on Trump, the first on July 13th at a campaign rally in Pennsylvania and the second on September the 15th at the Trump International Golf Course Club in Florida. Now, facing a backlash, the acting Secret Service director has been pushing for more resources while Congress is seeking to hold the agency responsible. Our reporter Benji Hare still standing by for more, and so is our political scientist Larry Sabato. Benji, so if you could give us a quick update on how this bill is going to go when it's put to vote today.
Well, it needs 2/3 to get. It would mean that if all Republicans supported it, it would need several Democrats to do so as well. It is a Republican-controlled chamber, the party of former President Donald Trump, only very narrowly, but given that threshold, they would therefore need some Democrat support here, although there seems to be some bipartisan backing of this legislation, given, of course, recent events. The thinking, from what we've heard from the likes of the Secret Service, the FBI, is that Donald Trump's security, whilst increased in terms of protection measures following that first assassination attempt, is not at the level that is enjoyed by the likes of Vice President Kamala Harris or President Joe Biden, and that might be the reason why, for example, the gunman just the other week at his golf course was able to get right to the perimeter and try to take aim at Donald Trump. And so if they increase those protection levels, it is seen as a way to try to keep the former president safe during this campaign as he vies for the Oval Office again.
Larry, it's been an unprecedented election last leg, if you like, with the shooting incidents. You've been following campaigns before. How alarmed have you been by what we've seen with the political mood in the country?
I'm very alarmed. I think almost all observers are. We've seen a dramatic increase in the threats of violence and even death threats aimed not just at presidential candidates or presidents, but also low-level election aides who are simply trying to do for very little pay what a democracy demands, which is good organization for the actual election. This has all come about really in the last 8 or 9 years, and it's deeply disturbing. Now, I've studied assassination attempts and, sadly, assassinations of presidents in the United States in our history, and something needs to be said here. Nominees for the party, the other party, the opposition party, do receive Secret Service protection, although that only started in the 1960s. But by no means is it the equivalent of the incumbent president and vice president. What the Secret Service, which is always understaffed and always has been understaffed, what they need is the cooperation of the candidates and their staffs. And sometimes that means not going out for a golf game when the golf course has not been thoroughly examined and staffed in advance. You can only do so much. And if the Secret Service had their way, I guarantee you, they would wrap every candidate in bulletproof glass and never let them out. But they can't do that. The candidates won't let them do it. The office holders won't let them do it. And sadly, this can be, in the United States, a violent society. We do have over 400 million guns. We only have 330 million people. but we have over 400 million guns in the United States.
Indeed, Larry, we're going to be looking at the whole issue of guns and gun control later in the show. Thank you very much for your time. Benji, they're also reporting for us for NDTV. Thank you for your time as well. Let's turn to another big story we are tracking. The Justice Department has said that foreign interference in the 2024 election posed a, quote, clear and present danger, unquote. Comments from the department have cited Iran's recent hacking of the Trump campaign, with information then sent to the Harris campaign as evidence. The department says that some adversaries were also seeking to damage Trump's chances of victory. Now let's take a deeper look at this story. We're joined by Brett Schaefer. He is Senior Fellow with the Alliance for Securing Democracy. Now, Brett, a spokesperson for the Trump campaign, has already said that this is proof that Iran wants Kamala Harris to win because she won't be able to stand up to, quote, Iran's reign of terror. What do you make of that argument?
Well, look, I mean, different allies, different adversaries have different political preferences based on the positions of the candidates. So I think it's probably accurate to say Iran would prefer a Harris administration, just as it's accurate to say Russia would prefer a Trump administration. But that really should be irrelevant when we talk about the security of our elections, when we talk about the need to defend our elections against foreign interference. So it really shouldn't be injected into the conversation. It's unhelpful when political campaigns try to politicize a foreign interference attempt. So yes, I think it is accurate that Iran would prefer Harris, but again, it should be irrelevant in this conversation.
Right, but Brett, last week, for example, I'm going to push you a little bit more on this because the senior Justice Department official, Matthew Olson, said that Russia was seeking to undermine Biden and Harris so as to boost Trump's re-election chances. But then 2 days ago, Microsoft's Threat Analysis Center talked about Russia putting out anti-Harris content. For instance, a baseless video of Harris involved in a hit and run. So I'm really a bit confused here. Does Russia want Harris in the White House, or does Moscow prefer Trump? How do we read this?
Moscow prefers Trump. I mean, there's really no question. The intelligence community has been pretty consistent on this point. But frankly, you don't need an intelligence assessment to understand why Moscow would prefer Trump. You look at Moscow's core interests right now, and it's undermining support for Ukraine, it's dividing NATO or weakening NATO, and it's dividing the transatlantic alliance. Trump is your preferred candidate on all of those issues. So again, this should not be the main issue that we're talking about when we talk about the need to defend our elections, to defend our democracy from foreign interference. But it's quite clear, even though, of course, Putin has said that he prefers Harris, he was being somewhat sarcastic when he made those comments, but it's quite clear that Moscow prefers Trump.
All right, Brett, some days ago, we've seen that the U.S. indicted 2 employees of Russian-controlled media company RT. The employees were accused of providing $10 million to an American company that sent out pro-Russia content on various issues like Ukraine. Now, both these RT employees are based in Russia. People are expected to be charged in the latest Iran attack any time now, but I really want to know, how much do such charges even matter? How do they help, given that they are on foreign individuals in some faraway place rather than here on U.S. soil?
Well, the DOJ knows that these individuals are probably never showing up in a U.S. courtroom. However, when you sanction these people, it makes it harder for them to do business overseas. It makes it harder for them to travel. So they do have some effect. I don't look at any of these charges as being real deterrents in terms of keeping our adversaries from attempting to interfere in our elections. However, what they do, I think, is they make it quite clear that the actions being taken by some of these adversaries, including people who are affiliated with what ostensibly is a foreign state media outlet, are criminal. It's not just that they're spreading narratives that we don't like, that don't align with the sort of U.S. interests. They are engaging in criminal activities. And I think that's important to stress also for the people who are in the United States who might work with these individuals. So these 2 people who are running this platform that was funded by Russia, that was funded by these 2 employees from RT, they may be facing charges later. And I think it will be a deterrent for individuals in the United States to work with foreign adversaries to help sort of facilitate these schemes that would allow foreign adversaries to interfere in our elections.
Got it. Now, this week we saw an unprecedented attack on Iran-backed Hezbollah militia in Lebanon, exploding pagers, as you've seen, and walkie-talkies. Israel is said to be behind those. Israel is said to be behind those attacks, as we know. Israel airstrikes have now pounded southern Lebanon after Hezbollah's leader vowed retribution for those pager attacks on U.S. soil. Just wondering how much more of this kind of disinformation campaign are we likely going to see given the stepped up tensions in the Middle East?
One of the major concerns with this election is when you look at the U.S.'s sort of main adversaries, the adversaries who have been active in trying to spread disinformation in the past, they are very motivated this election. So you take Russia, you take Iran, they both have significant incentives to try to spread disinformation in the US. And yes, they do have preferred candidates, and some of those disinformation campaigns may be targeted at boosting the prospects of those candidates, but a lot may just be targeted at trying to make Americans more divided, about trying to spread chaos, maybe lead to political violence in the aftermath of the election. So that is a major concern, I think, when we look at Iran, when we look at Russia, is they are very, very motivated this election. And I think they also are not going to be particularly risk averse. They don't care if they get caught. And so when they are actually caught and exposed here, they don't worry about the reputational damage in ways that other states would be very concerned if they were caught spreading a disinformation campaign in the US. So you have motivated adversaries and you have adversaries who aren't concerned about getting caught.
Thanks very much indeed, Brett, joining us here this morning. Lots to track on that story. Hope to talk to you again at some other point in time. Turning to other news now, Vice President Kamala Harris looked for a boost with undecided voters in swing state Michigan as she participated in a live stream with former talk show host Oprah Winfrey to focus on her plans to cut costs for the middle class, restore a national right to abortion and address gun violence. The event, billed as Unite for America and hosted by Winfrey from suburban Michigan, sought to tap into the same energy as long-running Winfrey's talk show. Harris further said that any intruder who breaks into her home is getting shot, highlighting her position as a gun owner.
I'm a gun owner. Tim Walz is a gun.
I did not know that.
If somebody breaks in my house, they're getting shot.
Yes, I hear that. I hear that.
Probably should not have said that. But my staff will deal with that later.
All right, for more, we're joined by Sharon Austin. She is Professor of Political Science at the University of Florida. Sharon, we heard Harris there. She talked about owning a gun, but she also went on to stress support for the U.S. Second Amendment, which protects the right to ownership. She was very clear about a ban on assault rifles instead. People might say that she's trying to straddle both sides here. How would you look at what Harris just said to Oprah Winfrey yesterday?
I think that she's trying to reassure people who may be hesitant to support her, especially in those battleground states, and especially in Pennsylvania, that she is not going to take their guns away. But the problem is that she has made comments in the past in which she has said that she supports red flag laws, which allow people to protest if they feel that someone owns a gun and that gun is a danger to them. They have a right to protest that and demand that that gun be taken away. She supports those laws, and then as she has indicated in the past. And another problem is that she has made it clear, even last night, that she's against banning assault weapons, and she's not apologized for that. And so I think there's some confusion on the part of some people, in the sense that many people are saying that they still don't know enough about who Kamala Harris is. And she's trying to clarify that if she's elected, she's opposed to assault weapons, and she feels that those should be taken away, and possibly even through some type of compulsory buyback program, but she's not in support of just taking guns away because she's trying to reassure people that both she and her running mate both are gun owners.
Okay, Sharon, let's talk a little bit more about who Kamala Harris is and what she stands for. What do we make of Harris's stance on the gun buyback program, which you mentioned? It's a program, for our viewers internationally, that would force gun owners to hand over their assault-style weapons to the government. Now, in October 2019, Harris said that she supported a mandatory gun buyback program, but now it seems that she won't look at that on a mandatory buyback basis. So how do we see this really? Harris trying to shift more to the center, given all those polls that see her as way too liberal?
Right. It's her trying to shift to the center, I think, and also to respond to some of the criticisms that she's received from the Trump campaign as being dangerously liberal. And I think that she supported compulsory programs in the past, but now she's sort of not really wanted to talk very much about it directly. She's just talked about the need for gun safety, the need for gun control, the different shootings that have taken place, especially at schools, and the need to ban assault rifles. And she even talked about that again yesterday. She's mentioned the need to ban assault rifles several times, but some people see that as somewhat of a flip-flop, because in the past she did say that she supported compulsory gun buyback programs, which would have said that people would have to allow their assault, not so much all of their guns, but their assault weapons to be, bought back. And now she's not saying that she supports it being compulsory now. So she really is vague on that.
Right. Sharon, sorry, that's all we have time for, running out of time here. Thanks very much indeed there. This debate on gun control likely not going to go away. We'll take a closer look at that in the coming weeks. And finally, former President Donald Trump told Jewish leaders in Washington that he will be the best friend Jewish Americans have ever had in the White House. During his speech at an event, Trump pledged to be the defender of Jewish Americans if he wins, but also seemed to suggest that if he loses the election, it will be their fault. The former president targeted his speech to Jewish voters, a group he has struggled to win over, repeating that Jewish people who vote for Democrats should have their head examined. That's a quote from him, now airing his grievances with US and Israeli flags behind him. Trump claimed that his support among Jewish voters went from 25% in 2016 to 29% in 2020. He also criticized Harris over the Biden administration's handling of the Israel-Hamas war and for what he called anti-Semitic protests on college campuses. And that's all that we have time for here. Thank you for your company here on US Election Watch. I'm Allister D'Souza in Washington, D.C.
This is an important message for people living with diabetes from people living with diabetes.
When I was experiencing the symptoms of diabetes, I didn't know what was going on.
You go on the internet and it's full of horror stories.
I didn't understand about carbs, I didn't understand about blood glucose levels.
That's why the support I get as a Diabetes UK member is so important.
You can become a Diabetes UK member for just £3 a month. When you do, you'll receive a practical guide specific to your type of diabetes and a copy of Balance magazine 4 times a year. Plus, you'll help support research that could lead to better treatments for all types of diabetes.
As members, we're all working it out together.
Call 0800 144 5410 or go online to become a Diabetes UK member for just £3 a month. Join us now because membership can help you learn to live better with diabetes.
Get that lucky cow feeling with luckycowbingo.com/bingo, the site that's bursting with beautiful bingo games. That's luckycowbingo.com/bingo.
Mindful Chef. Food to help you feel great. Try Mindful Chef now with 25% off your first 4 boxes. Healthy eating made easy at mindfulchef.com.
Pick up messes quickly and easily with a swivel sweeper from JML. The lightweight cordless floor sweeper that slides and glides in any direction and on any surface. The 360-degree swivel head and quad brush technology effortlessly cleans all kinds of messes. One click and the handle bends 90 degrees, so you can clean under furniture without bending down. And the touchless dirt tray means you never have to touch the mess. Experience effortless cleaning with a swivel sweeper. Only $49.99 from Asda and jmldirect.com.
I urgently need to ask for your help on behalf of animals at risk right now. With the pandemic came a surge in pet ownership. And sadly, we're now seeing a serious rise in neglect, cruelty, and abuse. Our services are being stretched to the limit. To make matters worse, our costs are soaring too. But we refuse to let animals suffer. So please, act now to help rescue the growing number of animals who've never needed us more. Please call or text the number on screen now to give £2 a month to the RSPCA. In one of the toughest times we have ever experienced, your gift will make all the difference to animals. You could help provide more life-saving treatment, food, shelter, and the loving care that many have never known. We know there are millions of you who, like us, care deeply and won't stand by while animals are suffering. We have to reach those trapped in a life of abuse and neglect before it's too late. Because for many, the RSPCA is their only hope. But we can only come to the rescue with the support of people like you. So please, will you help us be there no matter what? Call 0800 313 4392 or text RSPCA to 78866 to start your monthly gift today. Thank you.
Life in your 50s doesn't slow down, and if you're like me, you've done enough waiting. That's why I'm with Cover Today, the only over 50s life insurer with no waiting period. Unlike other insurers, who could make you wait up to 2 years for full cover, with Cover Today, you're fully covered from day one. Plus, you get your choice of a £125 gift card. Don't wait around to look after your loved ones. Get Cover Today.
To find out more, call our friendly UK team or visit covertoday.co.uk.
The debate has been ongoing since 2017, but it has now reached a feverish pitch with the Union Cabinet approving the proposal of the high-level panel headed by former President of India, Ram Nath Kovind. The committee had recommended a two-stage process, with Lok Sabha and Assembly elections being synchronized first, then followed by elections to the panchayats and municipal corporations. Opposition says that free and fair elections are at stake and simultaneous elections were never part of the original constitutional scheme that was set up when India became independent. It also argues that the government doesn't have the two-thirds majority in parliament to ensure its passage, and hence it's a headline-grabbing exercise. The BJP and the NDA argue that there were simultaneous elections to the Lok Sabha and the Vidhan Sabhas from the first general election in 1952 till 1967. And elections mean huge expenditure and burden on the exchequer. Today, on an average, 5 elections are held every year. This year alone, in April, May, we saw Lok Sabha polls. Currently, elections are being held in Jammu and Kashmir and Haryana. And later, there will be elections in Maharashtra and Jharkhand. On the show tonight, we ask, will one nation, one election make India vibrant, participative, and an effective democracy, or will it really be what the opposition is saying, an attack on federal structure? Joining me first on the show is someone who was part of this panel, former Solicitor General of India, Harish Salve. Mr. Salve, my first question to you, sir, is how do you envision the constitutional amendments that will be necessary for implementing one nation, one election, and what are the potential challenges in getting them passed?
The challenges are always political, and fortunately, that's something which I don't need to worry about.
So in terms of amendments, I mean, what will be the process of amendments and how many amendments will be needed?
There will be one constitution amendment bill. That's all that is required. And when the report comes out, it is fairly, there'll be very minor changes to the constitution. Nothing major. The impact may be major, but the changes are minor.
Yes, but any constitutional amendment requires 2/3 of the House present and voting for it to come through. That is really the process.
Any constitution amendment requires 2/3 present and voting.
And it also requires states to come on board.
Not necessarily, not unless it affects the states.
So how will you really go about in this legislation in case, the draft bill comes in the parliament?
That's what I said. That phase 2 of this, i.e. getting it passed in parliament, is something which I don't know and I'm no part of.
Mr. Salve, the critics are saying that this can have a potential impact on India's federal structure and the balance of power between the center and the states.
There is a chapter in the report. I suggest you read it, because the federal structure does not depend upon when elections are held. The federal structure will be strengthened if the country has more time to govern and less time of being put on hold. In 5 years, I think we have had 65 days in which there has been no election. Somewhere or the other, there's always the election going on in India. And the cost of governance and its impact on the GDP is something which is quantified in the report.
Can you really then outline a realistic implementation roadmap then, considering the complexities that are involved?
There's no great complexity involved, only for the first year to synchronize everything. Any assembly which may not have finished 5 years can be dissolved. And by the way, if you read the Constitution, it doesn't prescribe a minimum length of life. It says that it shall not be more than. It doesn't say it shall not be less than. And that's the founding fathers. In their wisdom, they drafted the Constitution that way. So only one step would be to synchronize elections. Once that is done, if elections are once synchronized, if any assembly stands dissolved in less than 5 years, the re-elections are for the balance period. In the same principle could apply to Parliament, that if Parliament in some time is dissolved mid-term, the elections will be for a balance period. This will also be a strong disincentive to the political system to destabilize elected governments. So once this kind of a structure is in place, if you want to do it, we can do it. It's no big deal. It's not a great upheaval of any kind. If we don't want to do it, we don't do it.
Of course, sir, you have spoken about that. There is a chapter which talks about cost saving, but I would ask that question nevertheless, because those who are saying that one nation, one election may not necessarily lead to significant cost saving and also reduce, one of the arguments have been that it will reduce to electoral fatigue, but that may not be the case.
No, it's not the cost saving per se. It is the impact on governance and therefore it's the knock-on effect on GDP. There is a detailed econometric analysis which is in the report.
Okay, then how would this affect the Model Code of Conduct and what changes would be necessary to ensure that it is effective?
The Model Code of Conduct will be exactly what it is, just that it will be in force for 2 months or 3 months it takes to get the whole country past elections. And then for the rest of the 57 months that follow, the governance in the country, whoever is in power, the governance in the country will be without any hindrance, will be without requiring security forces, deployment, civil servants deployments, etc., without all the disruptions which are inevitable in any election.
Of course, one concern is also about regional issues, that one nation, one poll will not be able to address the concerns which are there playing out in various states.
We had elections, about 4 months ago? And what happened in Andhra? Chandrababu swept Andhra, the TDP. But when it came to Lok Sabha, they didn't do well at all. We have had this example in Delhi. Delhi had elections. I think BJP won 7 out of 7. 4 months later, Aam Aadmi Party swept the polls, even if they had been held simultaneously. See, we have to stop treating the Indian voter with such disrespect and disbelief. The Indian voter now is matured. The Indian voter is very wise. He knows how to distinguish between state and national issues.
And how would you really address the issues of different states, their assembly tenures, and possible need for premature dissolution or extension of some?
It's only once you synchronize them, then if an assembly is dissolved prematurely, it gets elected for the balance period. And if you do an analysis, I must say it's been remarkable, except for some states where it's been an unstable political regimes, some of the smaller states. By and large, most big states have lasted 5 years. Governments may have changed, but the state the assembly has not been dissolved for 5 years.
So legally, you are saying that you're of the opinion that it's very pragmatic and practical, although the opposition calls it not pragmatic.
I am nobody to, I don't profess any special knowledge on pragmatism. There are reasons for it. There are reasons, I'm sure there are some reasons against it. It's a question of what you prefer. Do you prefer to have this kind of a loose politics where all the time the country is on election mode and people are living in trenches? And the senior elected representative also, who are ministers, half the time run around the country fighting one election or the other. If you think that's better for democracy, well, that's your view of democracy. I think we need to get on more with governance and less with elections. If you subscribe to that point of view, then this is the better option.
Mr. Salve, there is a group that thinks that because it will be implemented in a phased manner. Of course, the first phase will have Lok Sabha and Assembly elections synchronized, and the second elections will be happening after 100 days, which will have urban bodies and panchayat polls. So how is this really one nation, one election?
See, the trouble is you can't say just because we can't do everything in one go, it should never be done at all. Let's try synchronizing phase 1. If synchronizing phase 1 works well, if it doesn't work well, we abandon the idea. If it works well, these are all enabling provisions, correct? These are not compulsions. These will be enabling provisions. In these enabling provisions, you give it a start, you try working it. If it doesn't work, you go back to the old system. If it works, you spread it to the next level.
Okay, so you think that a law of this nature can be put in place, although you're sounding very, very optimistic, but there are regional parties and almost 17 parties which had submitted its suggestion before the committee of which you were a part of, that they are not in favor of it. Then how will this country-wide narrative in favor of these elections will be built?
Well, I'm optimistic because I always believe in the good sense prevailing ultimately.
Okay, let me rephrase my question again, Mr. Salve, and ask you far more direct question, which could be perhaps the most intrinsic and basic question to ask. Why should India have one nation, one election?
Because of all the reasons given in the report. It is good governance, it is good economics, it is good for the rule of law, it is good for administration. And I think these are very valuable. I think we are a nation which is today on the move. India is heading towards its place in the sun. We should waste less time on politics and get on more with governance, get on more with life. And of course, elections are a must in a democracy. Try and finish them off in 3 months, and then the next 57 months, we get on with work.
And does it really destroy federalism and compromise democracy?
Absolute zero impact on federalism. Federalism doesn't depend on when elections are held. Federalism depends on the relationship between the union and the states. And if the same rule applies to union and the states, I don't see how it at all even touches federalism, leave alone affect it.
Okay, the opposition is also saying that there is some kind of hidden agenda to weaken India's federal system and bring some kind of, have extended power to the central government.
Unfortunately, I lack the facilities of X-raying people's minds and finding out hidden agendas. I can only tell you what agenda I know of. If they are privy to